5 years previous, my best friend Ivan, he actually called me a junkie, and I was shocked. He said, you know, you're a junkie, and if you're not careful, you're going to wind up robbing a bank one day. About a year after that, I came in contact with a guy who had robbed a few banks, and I said, so what, you know, how'd you do it? And he took me through it. He said, this is what I did, you know. I shaved, because the cameras pick up the, you know, the contour of your face when you're unshaven. Cameras were different than they are now, surveillance cameras. And he said, this is what I did. I passed a note, and I got away with $3 grand, and I kind of filed that away for some reason. And I kind of pulled it out of my Rolodex in the spring of 1995 after, you know, exhausting all other avenues other than getting clean on how to support my habit. Early one morning, I decided before my girlfriend woke up that I was going to go out and rob a bank. And I did. I robbed a bank at the corner of Yonge and Dundas. It's now a Gap store, Scotia Bank. Passed the note, got away, at the same time terrified, excited, and very pleased that I had several $1,000s in my possession that I could go out and score. I never needed to use a weapon during a bank robbery. It's totally unnecessary. I remember robbing a CIBC and realizing that the teller was terrified. And I said to this individual, look, it's cool. I'm not going to hurt anybody. Just give me the money. And he was frozen with fear, and the teller next to him gave me the money out of his till. Now, I always think about that guy, because I know I scared him. You know, I didn't want to scare anybody. I'm not a scary guy. I was given the name the Bicycle Bandit after my third robbery. I had arrived at the bank and left the bank on a stolen bike. The cops need a moniker, and that was one they gave me. Bicycles have always been a part of my life since my childhood, and I, you know, rode around town selling drugs on my 18 speed through the early 80s, and it just seemed to me a great way to get away from the scene. And often I would return to see what was going on afterwards in a real ballsy kind of unsafe way to look at things. On one occasion on Yonge Street, I actually went to McDonald's across the street and watched the cops investigate the robbery. The cops came into McDonald's and ordered a coffee and a burger while I was sitting right there. My many years as a drug dealer, you know, I thought I was all that, you know, and a bag of chips. I thought I was pretty special. And I remember there was a big article, and there was a great picture of me, and I think that was after the 21st bank robbery. I was following it. I mean, I was full of myself. You know, I was reading about I wanted to read about myself. And I remember sitting at the cafe down the street, leafing through and reading the article, and two cops sat down right beside me and started a conversation with me, and I was freaking out, thinking that this was it, but they had no idea who I was. They didn't say, gee, that looks like you, but everybody in my circle said, Jesus, that looks like you. I mean, are you robbing banks? 2 days before I was arrested, I got a call from the guy who inspired me to rob banks. I was on my way to a bank robbery when he called me. And he said, look, I was just at this crack house, and they're talking about dropping the dime on you.
I knew I was going to get caught, and I knew that eventually the cycle would be broken, but whether or not I was going to survive it was another story. My last moments of freedom in August of 1995 were spent on this porch. After the last robbery of a Scotia Bank on University, I made my way back here and realized that I was moments away from being arrested. In the last 100 days of the bank robbery spree, I was obviously peaking with paranoia. All hell broke loose, and a shotgun came out of here, and a cop jumped out of a car over here, and I'll never forget the .38 pointed right between my eyes, and I could see the bullet in the chamber, and beyond that, I could see the face of the cop.
I was charged with, I think it was 26 bank robberies, but I lost count at 24. Thought I'd get 10, I got 7 years, which I was very happy with. Anything less, I would have been out far too early, only to hit the streets again with the intention of continuing my habit. As joints go, Joyceville is okay. I started to work out, I got healthy. It took me about 3 months to feel normal. I started writing people. I got a letter from somebody, and on the back, I recognized the name. It was Shelley Ashbury.
You know, I sort of kept track of him.
We had been friends since 1981, friends, lovers. We worked together. She worked for me at my booze cans.
When I began writing him in prison, it was just as a friend.
It kind of rekindled something for us.
I questioned myself, do I really want to get involved?
I didn't know what I could possibly offer this smart, beautiful woman. Being I'm not only a drug addict, but I'm an ex-convict. I'm a convict at the time, soon to be an ex-convict.
I always knew that he was a good guy. And I always knew that he was a loyal person, that he was a good friend, that he worked hard. I mean, all of those things Michael maintained throughout his life.
She saw things in me that nobody else might have, and her support was heartbreaking.
I really did care about him. And he was the same great guy that I'd always known.
Nobody had expressed these kind of sentiments to me.
When I got into the institution through all the security and everything else, and he put his arms around me, and I realized that resistance was futile.
When Shelley made her entrance, my life changed dramatically.
The first thing I bought when I got out of prison was my little red bike.
Red, just like the bike that I first received from my father. I was on pretty good footing when I got out. Shelley was a big help with that because I knew that we would be moving in together. I knew she was supportive and keeping a close eye on me, you know, because I needed to be watched very closely. Somebody did come and see me a month after my release and offer me a big brick of cocaine. The biggest post-release decision was saying no to that individual.
It's been a learning process for him, and I think that he's just done a fantastic job.
He deserves to have a second chance, and I'm glad that he got it, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
The volunteerism in prison started more to get me out of the joint. I had behaved myself to the point where I was eligible for these programs. And the best one was a volunteer gig at Frontenac Provincial Park. And seeing the deer and the wildlife and learning about stuff that I'd never been exposed to before in my life was huge for me because it was an indication of the stuff that I had been missing. My only exposure to life without drugs and alcohol was in prison. And so I carried that desire to live my life as clean as possible to the street with me. Working with the Anishinaabe Street Patrol kept me very grounded. We did sub-zero street patrols on bikes to look for the dead and the frozen. I realized that the people that I was helping on the street represented what I might have become. I had already been volunteering at CAMH for a number of years in my role as a co-facilitator in the cocaine group. I'm a chairperson of a speakers bureau called From the Heart Speaker Series, and we have a pool of speakers that goes into the community and talks about living with and overcoming addictions.
I find it very therapeutic to talk about my past, and because it's not scripted, I always learn. I learn something about myself.
You know, I get as much as I give, from clothing the homeless to speaking to kids. The June Callwood Outstanding Volunteerism Award was something that I never expected to be the recipient of. It was a very humbling to have my name associated with June Callwood, you know, an icon of social activism in this city. It's probably the proudest moment of my life. I have spoken to young offenders, and their stories made mine seem like nursery school. These kids are just seeking answers. They want feedback. They want answers from somebody who might have experienced the same things that they have, but survived. Because lots of us don't. If I can do it, you know, a hopeless, helpless, terrified junkie, anybody can do it. None of this happened deliberately. It was just, you know, a part of a cycle. I didn't just one day tug on my grandmother's apron string and say, hey, Grandma, I want to be a dope addict and a bank robber. My grandmother was, for all intents and purposes, a single parent. My biological grandfather was full-blooded Cree, who had his own issues with alcoholism and violence. My mother, no doubt, had a troubled childhood. She never really divulged to me the extent of her grief as a child, but I know that she didn't have it easy. Was I born bad? No. I became somebody that did a lot of bad things, some of which I'm not very proud of, and I don't often divulge. I had to forgive myself first. I mean, that's a common theme in recovery. But it's difficult, and that's where the making amends part comes in. That, too, is as selfish as it is giving. Having people understand that that's who I was, that's not who I am now, and I'm sorry. I hope people accept me for who I am and forgive me for what I've done.